Serious, what is your hometown horror story? U/SMTTT84 responded. My town has a really nice park right next to the train tracks, with a stage that if you are sitting looking towards the stage from the audience, you're looking right at the train tracks. During an annual talent show, a dude committed suicide by train in front of a few hundred people. Guess he wanted a show. U/BeardOffGod responded. A bit weird, but it revolved around my family actually. I come from a very small town in Northern California, population of about 3,000, where not much really happens other than gossip, and probably a bit of inbreeding. Back in the early 80s, a couple years before I was born, my uncle was out in the woods with his girlfriend. This area was relatively close to the high school, and it is where teenagers went to make out, smoke pot, and bang. A guy came up to my uncle's car, shot him a couple of times and raped his girlfriend. My uncle died, and the girl came back to tell her tale and get help. It's impacted my grandparents greatly, and I can still see the pain in their eyes around Christmas. He was killed in December. It threw my dad in a bit of a self-destructive nosedive, hence my birth, and the town didn't really recover for a while. They never found the guy, but they did have someone stand trial at one point. DNA evidence came back inconclusive, or something. The saddest thing LVE ever heard was when my grandpa told me that no matter how many people we have over, or how full the house is, there is always one person missing. And there always will be. U/deleted responded. Cop killed his wife in the bathtub. Cop's next wife goes missing, never to be heard about again. I bet someone reading this can guess who I'm talking about. U/TalksandAntlers responded. When I was in 7th grade, a girl went missing. They searched for her for a few days, then one of the searchers had gone into her house to grab refreshments and noticed a weird smell coming from a back room. They found her chopped up in some garbage bags hidden on a top shelf. The searchers had been in and out of that house literally thousands of times by that point. It came out later that she had been pregnant. After some questioning, her little sisters admitted that their father had been raping her since shortly after their mother died. He killed her when he found out she was pregnant, because he was going to be outed. As I said in a comment down below, the bit about her being chopped up didn't make it into the papers, and it might be hearsay. But the lady who found her had been a close family friend and told us about it. U/Frank Ocean 2 responded. Mexican here. In September 17th of 1998, at 3:40 a.m. a commando of sicarios enter a small ranch in El Zorzal, municipality of Ensenada, in Baja California. There were 3 houses interconnected by each other at the ranch, and the commando divided their men to enter each of the houses. They shot a 12-year-old that his only mistake was to open the door. One by one they raided Las Casas, until they found their guy, a rural teacher, then went bad, and was now in the drug business. They killed him at the spot. The rest of family and neighbors, 19 to be exact, was put against the floor. What do we do with them? A sicario asked. The only thing we can do, kill them all, and so they did. They shot a 8-month baby, a pregnant girl, an abuelita, the sister, the brother, the innocent. I would say that is the worst thing that has happened in my town. U/Dragdagger responded. Middlesbrough, UK. 2 smartass pediatricians at the local hospital decided to use a controversial and unfounded method of testing children for child abuse called reflexive anal dilation, literally spreading the kids' cheeks and stimulating the anus with equipment, then measuring the diameter. Thanks to their dodgy methods, 121 kids were taken from their homes, 94 returned when it was proven they weren't being abused, families wrecked, and the town still holds a lingering reputation as a pedophile hotspot to this day, despite it being false. This all took place in a fairly short period in the late 1980s. U/Drockavelli responded. In the late 80s, 3 high school students beat another student to death with baseball bats and threw him in a well. They said it was as a sacrifice to Satan. They are all 3 serving life in prison. The story was featured on Geraldo's somewhat famous Exposing Satanism episode. Edit. Here's an article about it in the LA Times from 1988. U/Wait What Did You Say responded. A 12-year-old girl, very self-conscious, used MySpace frequently and found a guy she didn't know personally, who showed interest in her. The guy talked with her and built this relationship with her over the course of a few months. And then, out of nowhere, he became very hostile and said the most disgusting things to her. Turns out, the guy was really her best friend's MOM. The girl ended up committing suicide, and it wasn't found out that the MySpace guy was her friend's mom until a couple months following her death. From what I can remember, the mother and the daughter behind the MySpace postings felt little to no remorse, or at least showed none, and moved away. They weren't punished at all, as there were no cyberbullying laws in place at that time. It was probably the first real incident of cyberbullying, and it sparked a lot of media legislation. It's a fairly well-known story, there's an ABC family movie based on it. U/Moxbuncher responded. It's a big city, so there are many, but the one that stuck with me so much was the story of a woman who lost her husband. Prior to that, she lost her 2 kids to a car accident, and then her husband died from cancer. When he died, and on the last night of the funeral, people said she had the coffin laid on her bed, where she slept beside it for the whole night. That one struck me as a kid, because it actually happened. A friend was a neighbor of the woman. U/Tiberius 666 responded. Some bloke was found at the roadside with his willy chopped off. Apparently he'd been banging some gypsy's wife. After some investigation, it turns out the gypsies got the wrong guy. Edit. As Esther pointed out too, he later on killed himself by autoerotic asphyxiation. U/Darren Edwards responded. Growing up, I remember kids talking about the girl who killed her parents and tried to burn them. It was a persistent story, but I didn't take it seriously until my mom pointed out the house it happened in, and just said the same thing. The girl killed both her parents, and tried to burn them in the garage. In high school, one of the teachers told us more. He was the only person with a decent camera in the county, so he was put in charge of taking the crime scene photos. However, it was so cold that his camera froze up. The local sheriff had him pretend to shoot a couple of rolls, while the state police were around and retake the real pictures when it was warmer. He told us the girl and her sister were sexually abused by their father, and their mother let it happen. One night she stabbed them with scissors and dragged them to the garage. She tried to cover it up by lighting them on fire, but the only flammable thing she had was perfume, and just managed to burn some of the clothing. I did some internet searching and got some more details from my mother, like the girl's name. She knew that the girl was taken to a mental hospital and raped by a staff member and got pregnant. I was able to find out that she went on to get cleared of murder charges with a temporary insanity plea and was released a few years later. U/deleted responded. I have one. Maybe a year or 2 ago, a woman disappeared with her baby daughter. Her 2 boys were upstairs. They called their aunt when their mom never came back. The aunt called the police, and the kids told them that their mother had gone to talk with the baby girl's dad. They searched for that woman everywhere, and I mean everywhere. She lived in a very populated area, so it was very weird that nobody had seen anything. They searched her phone, and found some texts between her and her baby daddy. The guy was asking to see the girl, give her some presents, and deliver the money he owed for child support. He was the last person to see them both. 1 or 2 days later, some neighbor hears a baby crying outside. She goes searching and realizes that the noise is coming from the gutter. She gets a flashlight, and sees the missing baby girl alive and crying. But she was over something pale and flesh-looking. The old lady reaches out a little more, and lets out a scream that was heard by many neighbors. Next to the baby was her mother, cold, white, and dead. The police called the baby girl's daddy to question him. They searched his car, and found traces of blood, and when they checked his records, they found out that the woman had sued him for child support, and he was convinced the baby wasn't his. The trial ended a couple of months ago. He got life in prison. I have more, in case you want to hear them. U/Kenners responded. The most famous is probably the Yorkshire Ripper, aka Peter Sutcliffe. He didn't just kill in my hometown, but the surrounding towns too. Incidentally, my mum's maiden name is Sutcliffe, and her dad, my granddad, was a lorry driver at the time, just like the Ripper. She spent a fair few months being ostracized or whispered about around school, because her classmates were convinced my granddad was him, even though he was seen around town and clearly was not in police custody. U/Clapyotits responded. This guy I used to be sort of friends with in high school decapitated his girlfriend, cut out her uterus, ate the uterus, and wrapped her head in a plastic bag, and put it in a lagoon near my house. He did it to bring about the apocalypse. Or at least, that was his reasoning. Then afterwards, when he was in jail awaiting trial, he tried to act like he was insane, saying the sheriff was his dad, and was writing him letters like, "Hey, Dad. When do I get out?" I remember right around the time of his trial I was in the transport van going back to jail. I was there for possession of Lortab, clean for years now, smiley face. Then he was asking about the rehab I was being sent to because he was there when they read out my sentence. It was creepy as fuck having him striking up a conversation like it was nothing. Yeesh, thank God I'm a girl, and they had him shackled the fuck up and away from pretty much everyone. Especially the women. U/Lively Shoes responded. A sophomore from my sister's high school went missing around a month ago. Her mother was in a relationship with an abusive Dushekino. With plans to file for divorce and to move down south with their family, the mother and daughter thought everything would be over soon. Girl doesn't show up to school for a few days and her classmates just assume that she's sick. I'm sure her friends texted her, but those details are unclear to me. All I know is that the neighbor smelled something bad and had the police investigate the girl's house. Police find the girl and her mother bludgeoned to death and rotting away. Murder weapon was a hammer and the boyfriend did it. Psycho just left them there. Craziest thing that haunts me is thinking about who had to go first and had to watch the other go down with a hammer being beaten to a bloody pulp themselves. Guy's in jail now and I hope he rots there. Rise Against Hind responded. A girl's family made some people mad. They considered themselves a low-class mob. So the girl goes missing a week later. She turns up in pieces. They cut her head off and tossed her top jawbone in one family member's yard and her bottom jaw in another. Also another story. It was Halloween. A guy was sitting on a stoop passing out candy dressed as a samurai with a katana strapped to his back. People kept commenting on the realistic decorations of his house, particularly the severed head sitting next to him. It took a while, but eventually people realized the head was real and it was his mother's. /Cheshire_brat responded. This horribly brutal killing happened in my hometown. It was horrible. I knew the victims, we all did. Terrifying stuff. The well-known bodies in the barrels murders didn't happen nearby, but the bank where the bodies were hidden was pretty close. Those were horrific. There's a movie about them, LVE never seen it, but apparently it's really close to what happened and it's horrifying. My mum taught the child of one of the victims. There were also the Truro murders that happened pretty nearby, as well, but that was in the late 70s. There's a reason I don't live around there anymore. /LNZY1 responded. In the 10 years I have lived in this rural southern town, there were two big murders that got a lot of press. The first was the death of a young mother of two, who was a manager at our local McDonald's. She went missing and a few weeks later her body was found stuffed in a trash can floating in the lake. My friend from high school and another person found the body. Her husband was having an affair and wanted to marry his side girl, but did not want to lose custody of his kids. So he killed mommy. She was 21. The second one started when police found the dismembered body of a man scattered around a wooded area. They never found the head, supposedly. They arrested two guys and one of them was a guy who used to hit on me at work. I worked in a grocery store bakery, and he was a big guy. When I say big, I mean big. Pushing 500 pounds easily. /deleted responded. So, back when I was in high school, some senior had a birthday party. This party was at a club that lost its liquor license, so you could be there if you were under 21. Well, it also wasn't in the best part of town. Some guys who were of not the best moral character showed up, and one apparently had either started harassing some guy's girlfriend, or had grabbed her ass. I don't know the specifics. I wasn't there and was several years younger than them. Well, the boyfriend started telling the guy to back off. They got into it, and another guy stepped between them, told them to just walk away. Well, poor moral character pulled a knife out, slashed peacekeeper's neck, and stabbed boyfriend in the arm. I found out about it on the news the next morning. Came in Monday and basically every teacher just said, fuck this, I'm not teaching. Except one, of course, because she was an enormous bitch. The kid had a brother in my grade too. He ended up just completely skipping class for the rest of the year, and the school pretty much let him because his brother was killed. I'm not sure what became of the brother, but the guy who stabbed the kid I believe is currently doing time for it. /Zapachigo responded. Couple from my high school, a year or two behind me. I was in the class with their siblings, now in their late 30s and married. Marriage is falling apart. He has moved out. She lives in the suburban home with the kids. She starts a relationship with a co-worker, even posting tropical vacation pics with her new boyfriend. One day, the jealous husband goes to the home of the ex-wife of the new boyfriend, kidnaps her, brings her to his wife's house, kills them both, tries to make it look like the boyfriend's ex killed his wife. Jealous husband is instantly suspected and taken into custody, and eventually convicted. /Albino Hessian responded. A woman lived in some apartments with her newborn daughter a couple of years back. Her boyfriend and father of her baby was a violent convict, who was in and out of jail, and had problems with substance abuse that ultimately caused her to break up with him for good. I guess the stresses of being a single mom got to her, and she started seeing him again, after she found out he was apparently doing well, and wanted to rekindle the relationship with him. She made arrangements to have her boyfriend watch their baby, while she went out to work, and the boyfriend showed up high on meth, or coke, and started ruthlessly beating the crap out of her. After he basically beat her to a pulp, he took the baby into the bathroom, and raped it to death, while the mom laid on the floor unable to do anything about it. Afterwards a manhunt happened that lasted a couple of days. The boyfriend was eventually caught, and died a couple of months later, after getting jumped and shanked by some inmates after they found out what he did. The mom survived. /deleted responded. I posted this in the other thread about missing persons. St. Patrick's Day 1995. 6 teenaged boys from my hometown went missing out on Lake Ontario. My brother and I were friends with one of the guys and his sister. They had all gotten drunk that night and stole 2 boats from the local marina, and took them out on the lake and were never seen again. Neither boat was ever found and not a single body. The only thing ever found was a gas can off one of the boats. The search was extensive, from Georgian Bay all the way down to the States, but it turned up nothing. They became known as the Lost Boys. 2 years ago the families were informed that there had been a pair of jeans found with human remains some time ago that were never DNA tested, and the families are trying to have it done now, but for some reason the local police aren't doing it. You can read all about it here. U/LSK responded. An entire family was murdered by the daughter's ex-boyfriend. The household consisted of dad, his girlfriend, his kids, 1 son, 1 daughter, and the daughter's baby. In the middle of the night, the baby's father broke in and beat the whole family to death with a baseball bat, except the baby. Then he took the baby and set the house on fire. The only other survivor was a teenage friend of the son, who was sleeping over. He heard all of the commotion and jumped out a window. He was left dealing with the speculations that maybe he and the son could have overpowered the murderer to stop the carnage had he not fled. U/deleted responded. I had a neighbor who changed rather dramatically. She used to be a normal 40-something. Moved around, did some gardening. Then she disappeared for a while. When she came back, she was like a zombie. Her husband helped her when she tried to walk around. It was like somebody sucked her brain out of her head. Then I heard from their son. He was a year older than me. I was 18 and him 19 at the time. He never told me exactly what her condition was, but he did mention that his older sister, Candace, was watching a friend's infant and she walked out of the room for a second and the chair she was in fell over and the child died on impact. I'm not sure if the two had anything to do with each other. Was the mother in shock? Is that what it was? I assumed it was something viral. The mom was a nutcase from what I saw after that. She didn't talk or do much of anything. The neighborhood pretty much lost touch with them. U/Sleepmeans Death Form responded. Homecoming game freshman year, 2013, football player collapses right before halftime. Band goes to set and cheerleaders get down one knee as usual. Player is down for a few minutes. He finally gets up and walks back to the sidelines with medic staff's help. Collapses again in front of the sidelines, still on playing field, does not get back up. 20 minutes passed. They start to defibrillate him on the sidelines while the game keeps going. Band heads to the back of the bleachers so we can get ready for homecoming crap. Ambulance is finally called for him. People are screaming and crying at this point. School decides to keep going with homecoming. The game is played in its entirety. Phone calls and texts start being traded that the football player was pronounced dead en route to the hospital, which was less than 5 minutes from the stadium, but the ambulances that were arranged to be at all games decided to work a haunted house the night of this particular game. Everyone figures out pretty quickly that the player probably died while on the field. Town still isn't over this 4 years later. U/2_legit_to_quit responded. A girl I went to school with who was a grad older than me was brutal murdered by 2 people she knew. They beat her till she was barely alive, left her for dead, and then came back lit on her fire. She was still alive. A law is currently being written up in her name, because she was special needs, and they want harsher punishments for crimes like this. She was one of the sweetest girls and I think of her every so often. This happened 2 years ago. Today. Another one was a woman my aunt worked with. She dated someone from work, in a factory, and they hire ex-felons. Everyone knew he was abusive. One day she didn't show up to her shift and everyone, including me, crazy, went on a manhunt for her. She was found strangled to death in her car in a parking lot. Very sad. And lastly, a girl I graduated with had a suicidal mom, who jumped in front of a train about 10 years ago. Lots of crazy stories for such a small town. We'll link to stories if possible if anyone is interested. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one.